The sun had set and darkness swallowed the dead city. The human exploration team huddled inside the hollow shell of a collapsed building. Commander Riley's eyes scanned every shadow, every movement, but the silence pressed down on them like a heavy weight. Even the wind had stopped, leaving an unnatural stillness. "Commander," one of the engineers whispered, pointing to a flickering light down the street. "That's not from our suits. Something's there." Riley's jaw tightened. "Stay calm. Keep your eyes open. No sudden movements." Her voice was steady but her heart raced. She knew instinctively that the planet was testing them. The team advanced carefully. Each step was measured, each sound amplified in the eerie silence. Broken buildings loomed on either side, their hollow windows like dark, empty eyes watching the intruders. Dust rose with every step, swirling in faint beams of light from the team's flashlights. Suddenly, a sharp clatter echoed through the street. The team froze. Riley motioned for them to duck behind a wall. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she tried to peer into the darkness. Nothing moved. And yet, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Then it struck. From the shadows, creatures lunged. They were humanoid in shape but twisted and broken, with pale gray skin stretched tight over sharp bones. Their eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, and their claws scraped against metal and stone as they attacked. The team barely had time to react. Screams echoed as one explorer was dragged into the shadows, vanishing within seconds. "Fall back," Riley shouted, firing her weapon. Bright energy bolts lit the street, hitting some of the creatures. They hissed and retreated momentarily, but it was clear these beings were not ordinary. "Commander, they're everywhere," another team member yelled, trying to keep his footing as one of the creatures jumped from a rooftop. Riley grabbed his arm and pulled him behind cover. "Focus. We fight smart, not fast," she barked. Her mind raced. The team had no idea what they were dealing with, but Riley knew panic would be their undoing. She needed a plan, and fast. As the team regrouped in the shadows, Riley noticed something unusual. The creatures moved with a strange intelligence, almost like they were being guided by a single mind. Every attack, every movement seemed coordinated. This was no mindless swarm. Something controlled them, something deep within the planet. The team tried to retreat further into the city, but the streets were a maze of rubble and collapsed buildings. Every turn revealed more of the dead, waiting patiently, their eyes glowing in the darkness. Riley realized they could not outrun them. They had to fight, or die trying. "Over here," Riley called, pointing to a structure that seemed more intact. It looked like an old government building. The team hurried inside, barricading the doors with heavy debris. Inside, the walls were covered with strange carvings, symbols that pulsed faintly as if reacting to the creatures outside. Riley scanned the room. "These symbols, they're like the records we found earlier. The planet itself is alive. It's controlling them." The team stared in disbelief. The dead were not just attacking randomly. They were part of a system, a network of intelligence that had survived centuries of abandonment. A loud crash shook the building. One of the walls gave way and a creature slipped inside. The team fired their weapons, but the creature dodged effortlessly, moving with unnatural speed. It lunged at one of the explorers, but Riley pushed him aside, taking the full brunt of the attack. Pain shot through her arm, but she managed to drive the creature back with a precise energy shot. "We need to find the source," Riley shouted. "If we can destroy whatever is controlling them, we might have a chance to survive." The team nodded, fear and determination written on their faces. They knew the next steps would be the hardest yet. Moving through the ruins, they had to face traps, ambushes, and creatures that seemed to appear from nowhere. Every shadow held a threat, every sound was a warning. As they crept forward, they noticed more signs of the planet's intelligence. Broken vehicles moved slightly on their own. Lights blinked in patterns almost like signals. And in the distance, a low hum filled the air, a sound that vibrated through the ground and into their bones. "They're calling it something," one of the scientists whispered. "It's like the planet is alive and it's awake because of us." Riley nodded grimly. "Then we have to move fast. The longer we stay, the stronger it gets." Suddenly, a deafening roar filled the city. The ground shook violently. From the tallest ruins, dozens of creatures leapt down, converging on the team's position. The explorers scattered, firing desperately as Riley led them through a narrow alley. She knew every second counted. One misstep and they would all be gone. As they ran, Riley's mind raced. This was only the beginning. The dead had awakened, and the planet had decided they were intruders. She realized that surviving the first attack was not enough. They had to understand the dead world, and fast, before it consumed them completely. At the end of the alley, the team paused briefly, catching their breath. They were alive but only barely. Behind them, the ruins stirred again. Shadows moved, glowing eyes watched, and the hum grew louder. Riley turned to her team, her face set with determination. "We can't run forever," she said. "We fight smart. We find the heart of this planet. And we stop it, before it stops us." The team nodded, fear and courage mixing in their eyes. They stepped forward into the darkness, knowing that the dead world was watching, and waiting for them to make a mistake. The team moved deeper into the dead city, their footsteps echoing through broken streets and crumbling buildings. The first battles had taught them one thing: the dead were not only alive, they were organized. Every step forward was a test, every shadow a threat. Commander Riley led them, her eyes sharp, scanning for any sign of movement. They reached a massive structure at the heart of the city. Unlike the other ruins, this building seemed untouched by time, glowing faintly with an eerie light. Symbols lined the walls, pulsing with energy that resonated through the ground. Riley felt the vibrations deep in her chest. This was the source, the core controlling the dead. "Stay close," Riley whispered. "The moment we step inside, we are entering its domain. One mistake and it could end everything." The team entered cautiously. The air was heavy, charged with energy that made their skin tingle. A low hum filled the chamber, growing louder with every step. Shadows flickered across the walls, moving independently of any light source. The dead were watching, waiting for them to make the first move. At the center of the chamber was the core itself. A massive, pulsating orb of energy, surrounded by skeletal remains frozen in poses of terror and awe. The core emitted waves of power, and Riley could feel it in her bones. It was alive, intelligent, and aware. "This is it," Riley said quietly, gripping her weapon. "Everything we've faced, the attacks, the traps, it all comes from this." Suddenly, the shadows shifted violently. The dead appeared from every corner, their glowing eyes fixed on the humans. They moved faster now, more aggressive, as if the core had sensed their arrival and was ready to strike. "Form a perimeter," Riley shouted. The team obeyed, backs pressed together, weapons raised. Bolts of energy shot across the chamber, striking dead figures that lunged forward. But for every creature they defeated, two more seemed to appear. The core's influence was stronger here than anywhere else. Riley's mind raced. They couldn't fight all of them directly. They had to reach the core. "We split," she commanded. "Some of us draw their attention. The rest reach the core." A small group followed Riley toward the orb, weaving through a battlefield of shadows and debris. Each step was a gamble. The dead seemed to anticipate their moves. One explorer was caught, pulled into the darkness by unseen hands, his scream echoing through the chamber. Riley forced herself to stay focused. There was no time to mourn. As they approached the core, Riley noticed strange control panels partially buried under rubble. Ancient symbols glowed faintly, almost like a language that could be understood if studied carefully. "This is it," she said. "If we can manipulate it, we can stop the dead." The team worked quickly, connecting wires, pressing symbols, and carefully following patterns from the ancient records they had recovered. The core pulsed faster, sending waves of energy through the chamber. The dead froze mid-step, their eyes wide as if shocked by something unfamiliar. But the core was not defenseless. A massive figure emerged from the shadows, larger and more powerful than any they had faced before. It moved directly toward Riley, claws extended, eyes glowing like molten fire. She fired repeatedly, but the figure barely flinched. Riley knew this was the final test. She shouted to her team, "Keep it busy. I'll finish this." Diving behind a pillar, Riley accessed the final symbols on the control panel. Her fingers moved with speed and precision. She ignored the pounding of her heart, the screams, and the clawed hands reaching for her. Every movement counted. A blinding light erupted from the core. The chamber shook violently. Energy waves knocked the dead off balance. The massive figure screamed, a sound of frustration and rage, and recoiled. The core pulsed faster, almost as if it were alive and fighting back. Then, a surge of energy shot from the orb, hitting the control panel. Sparks flew and the room filled with smoke. Riley shielded her eyes but kept working. She had to complete the process. One final push, one final command, and the energy began to collapse inward. The dead froze. The hum grew louder, then suddenly stopped. Silence descended, heavy and complete. The shadows retreated, disappearing into the corners of the chamber. The energy of the core dimmed until it was nothing more than a faint glow. Riley collapsed to her knees, exhausted but alive. Around her, the team slowly emerged, injuries and fatigue etched on their faces, but relief in their eyes. They had done it. The core, the source controlling the dead, was neutralized. But Riley knew better than to celebrate. The planet was still alive, still dangerous, and still aware of their presence. They had survived the confrontation, but the dead world had not revealed all its secrets. Riley looked around at her team. "We did it, but we can't stay here. We leave now or we risk being trapped forever." The explorers began to move back through the ruins, each step careful and deliberate. The shadows were gone, but the memory of the attacks lingered. Every corner they had passed, every dead they had faced, reminded them of how close they had come to destruction. As they exited the chamber, Riley allowed herself a small, bitter smile. They had faced the core, confronted the dead, and survived. But the dead world had left a mark on all of them, a reminder that some places were not meant to be disturbed. And somewhere, deep beneath the ruins, the faint glow of the core pulsed once more, almost imperceptibly as if whispering a warning. "We are not finished. We are still here. We are waiting." The team moved cautiously through the ruins, their weapons ready, hearts pounding from the first deadly encounter. The city was silent again, but Riley knew better than to trust the silence. Every shadow, every flicker of movement could hide a predator. The first attack had taught them one thing: the dead were not mindless. They were organized, controlled by something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Riley led the way toward a massive structure at the center of the city. It looked like a palace or a government building, tall and intact compared to the surrounding ruins. Strange symbols covered the walls, glowing faintly in the darkness. Riley touched one carefully. A shiver ran down her spine. The symbols pulsed, almost as if responding to her presence. "They're alive, somehow," she whispered to her team. "This planet itself, it's alive." Inside the building was a labyrinth. Broken floors, shattered windows, and fallen debris made every step a challenge. But amidst the destruction, the team discovered old chambers filled with preserved records, holographic projections that flickered to life when touched. Scenes of a once thriving civilization appeared, showing humans and aliens, buildings and machines. Then the images shifted, showing chaos. The people fought each other, their technology spiraling out of control before everything stopped abruptly. "They vanished, or were destroyed," muttered one of the scientists, scanning the holograms. "But look here, these symbols. They appear after the chaos. Like a warning, or a seal." Riley studied the records closely. Her mind raced. The civilization didn't just die naturally. They did something forbidden. Some experiment, maybe technology, that brought the dead back. And now, it's controlling them. A sudden sound interrupted their thoughts, a low hum like the heartbeat of the planet itself. The walls vibrated faintly. Dust fell from the ceiling. The team froze. Riley signaled them to stay quiet. Then came the first whisper. At first it was barely audible, but it grew steadily, echoing in their minds as if speaking directly to them. "Leave, or be part of us." Riley clenched her fists. "It's not a threat, it's a warning. This world doesn't want us here, but it's testing us." The team moved deeper into the building. Each corridor was a maze with traps hidden in the shadows. Doors that should have been locked were open, revealing rooms filled with skeletal remains. Some of the bones were human, others alien. All had been arranged deliberately, in patterns that mirrored the glowing symbols outside. "They're not just attacking," said Riley. "They're teaching us something, or warning us. Every move we make is part of a test." Suddenly, a door at the far end of the hallway slammed shut, trapping them inside. The temperature dropped sharply. Their breath fogged in the cold air. Shadows stretched along the walls, moving independently of any light source. Riley raised her weapon, scanning the room. From the corner, a figure emerged. At first, it looked like a shadow, but then it moved closer, revealing a humanoid shape with glowing eyes and decayed skin. It didn't rush at them. Instead, it walked slowly, deliberately, as if it had a purpose. "They're intelligent," whispered one of the explorers. "They know what we're thinking." Riley stepped forward. "It's the planet, or whatever is controlling it. We need to reach the center. That's where the source is." The figure stopped, tilting its head, observing them. Then, with a sudden burst of speed, it vanished into the shadows. The walls trembled, and a low rumble echoed throughout the building. The team realized that the dead were not just hunting, they were guarding. Every attack in the city had been carefully calculated to guide, test, or even trap them. Riley's mind worked quickly. "We need a strategy. This isn't just survival. We have to outthink them. They discovered a spiral staircase leading downward into the bowels of the building. The air grew heavier, thicker with an energy that pressed on their minds. Strange lights pulsed from the walls, creating patterns that seemed to tell a story. Riley followed the trail, noting every symbol and sound. "This is it," she said quietly. "The source is below. Whatever is controlling the dead, it's down there." As they descended, they found a massive chamber. At its center was a glowing core, pulsing with an eerie light. The walls around it were lined with statues and skeletons, frozen in poses of terror and awe. Energy crackled through the air, and the hum from before grew deafening. "The dead, they're connected to it," Riley said. "Every movement, every attack, they're controlled by this core. And if we destroy it, maybe, just maybe, we can stop them." Before anyone could react, the shadows outside the chamber shifted. Hundreds of figures appeared, surrounding them. Riley realized with horror, the dead world had been waiting for them to reach this point. And now it was ready to strike. Riley steadied herself. "Stay together. Watch every corner. We move carefully, but we do not hesitate. This is our only chance." The team advanced slowly, weapons raised, hearts racing. Each step toward the glowing core was a step deeper into danger, a step closer to discovering the truth of the dead world. And yet, as terrifying as it was, Riley felt a spark of hope. Humans had survived impossible odds before. They could do it again, if they were clever, brave, and united. The dead watched silently, waiting for a single mistake. And Riley knew that mistake could cost them everything. The chamber shook with energy as the team faced the mass of dead surrounding them. Shadows moved in the corners, creatures' glowing eyes locked onto each human. Riley's heart pounded, but her mind was sharp. She knew panic would get them killed. Survival depended on thinking fast, and moving faster. "Form a circle," Riley shouted. Her voice echoed off the walls. The team obeyed, backs pressed together, weapons ready. Each member's fingers trembled on triggers, eyes scanning every shadow, every flicker of movement. The dead lunged first. They came silently at first, then with terrifying speed, claws scraping against stone and metal. The explorers fired their weapons, bolts of energy cutting through darkness. Some fell, but many advanced relentlessly, coordinated, almost as if guided by a single mind. "They're too organized," one of the scientists shouted. "This isn't random, they're planning every move." Riley nodded grimly. "Exactly. And we have to outthink them. Use their coordination against them. Split them up. Confuse them. Keep moving." The team scattered, diving behind pillars and fallen debris. Shadows lunged at empty spaces, missing their targets, and Riley's team fired from cover. Every movement counted. Each second was a battle between instinct and fear. Riley noticed a strange pattern. The dead avoided certain areas, moving like they feared something. She realized these areas corresponded to symbols on the walls, symbols glowing faintly in the energy of the core. "Focus on the symbols," Riley shouted. "Lead them into the gaps. It might slow them down." The team followed her plan, luring the creatures into dead ends and traps. Explosives set earlier by engineers detonated, scattering debris and causing the dead to falter temporarily. Bolts of energy flashed, screams filled the chamber, and the hum of the planet grew louder, vibrating through their bones. But it was not enough. The dead were relentless. Each time one fell, another appeared. It was as if the core itself sent reinforcements. The explorers realized that the planet, and the dead, were watching, testing them, learning from their every move. Riley's mind raced. "We need to get closer to the core. If we destroy it, we can stop this chaos." The team advanced cautiously, weaving through the chaos. One explorer tripped, and a dead figure reached for him. Riley dove, pushing him out of the way as claws scraped the floor. Energy bolts erupted, scattering the creature. "Keep moving," Riley urged. "We are not leaving anyone behind." They reached the outer rim of the core chamber. The energy from the glowing core was intense. It pulsed like a heartbeat, sending waves of light and force through the room. Shadows flickered and stretched, the dead moving faster and becoming more aggressive. Riley spotted a control panel near the base of the core. "That's it," she shouted. "If we can manipulate it, we can control or destroy the source." The team hurried toward the panel, but the dead surged forward, trying to block their path. Riley fired, diving from cover to cover. Every step was a struggle, every breath a battle. An enormous figure, larger than the others, emerged from the shadows. It seemed intelligent, more aware, and it moved directly toward Riley. She didn't hesitate. She raised her weapon and fired. The figure roared, but it didn't fall. It grabbed one of the explorers, lifting him off the ground. Riley's stomach twisted. She knew they could not fight all of them, not at once. Focus on the core, Riley yelled. It's the only way. The team reached the control panel. Sparks flew as they hacked into the ancient system. Lights from the core pulsed faster, and the dead howled in unison, a chilling, unnatural sound. Riley adjusted the controls, her fingers flying over the interface. Suddenly the ground trembled violently. The walls shook, sending dust and debris crashing down. The dead surged forward like a tidal wave. Riley gritted her teeth, refusing to look away from the control panel. Then, a beam of concentrated energy shot from the panel toward the core. The chamber filled with a blinding light. The dead froze mid-attack, their glowing eyes widening in shock. For a moment, everything was silent except for the low, pulsing hum of the core. The team staggered back, shielding their eyes. Slowly, the light dimmed and the shadows faltered. Some of the dead collapsed, motionless. Others retreated, disappearing into the darkness. The energy of the planet seemed to weaken. Riley's team had done it. They had survived the first major assault. But the cost was high. Injuries, exhaustion, and fear weighed heavily on them. And Riley knew deep down this was only the beginning. The core pulsed weakly, but it was not destroyed. The planet was still alive, still intelligent, and still aware of their presence. Riley knew they had to go deeper to confront the heart of this dead world, if they wanted to survive. As the team regrouped, catching their breath, Riley looked around at the ruins and the lifeless figures of the fallen. Her mind was sharp, her determination stronger than ever. We fight smart, we fight together, she said. We finish this or we become part of the dead world ourselves. The hum of the core grew again, faint but persistent. Shadows shifted in the corners of the chamber, and Riley knew the dead were waiting for their next move. The battle was far from over, and the true challenge lay ahead. The chamber was quiet now, but the silence was heavy, almost suffocating. Commander Riley and her team moved cautiously through the ruins of the dead city. Their bodies ached from the battle, their clothes torn and bloodied, but every sense was alert. The dead world had not forgiven them, it had only paused. Riley led the group toward the transport ships parked at the city's edge. The glow from the core had dimmed, but the air still hummed with energy. Every building seemed to pulse, every shadow stretched unnaturally. She knew the dead could rise again at any moment. We move fast but we stay together, Riley said firmly. One mistake and the world will swallow us alive. As they progressed, tremors shook the streets. The ground cracked, sending dust and debris flying. Shadows flickered in every corner, hinting at movement, even when the dead themselves were nowhere in sight. It was clear the planet's intelligence was still watching. Suddenly, from behind a crumbled building, hundreds of dead figures appeared. Their glowing eyes fixed on the humans. The survivors froze for a moment, then instinct kicked in. Riley shouted, "Form up. We fight if we must, but we do not stop moving." The team fired their weapons, energy bolts lighting up the darkness. The dead surged forward, relentless and coordinated, as if the planet itself had given them new orders. One of the explorers was grabbed by multiple figures, his screams echoing in the night. Riley's stomach twisted, but she could not stop. Every second counted. A flash of inspiration struck her. To the rooftops. Move higher. The dead can't climb everything at once, she yelled. The team scrambled onto the broken buildings, leaping across rooftops and balancing on beams. The dead attempted to follow, but many fell into the streets below. The humans gained a slight advantage, but it was temporary. As they neared the transport ships, a low rumble shook the entire city. The glowing core, though weakened, pulsed once more. Shadows stretched and twisted, and the dead surged with renewed energy. Riley's eyes narrowed. The planet was not finished with them. We have to overload the core. Riley shouted to her engineers. If we can send one final surge, it might disable the planet's control over the dead, long enough for us to escape. The team hurried back toward the chamber, the dead closing in from all directions. They dodged falling debris, fired at pursuing shadows, and ran with every ounce of strength they had left. The city itself seemed to fight against them, floors crumbling, walls shaking, but Riley refused to falter. At the core chamber, the engineers quickly connected the remaining circuits, inputting commands they had learned from the ancient records. The orb pulsed violently, energy flaring in a dazzling display. The dead froze, confused, their glowing eyes flickering. Now! Riley yelled. A final surge of energy shot through the core. Sparks and light exploded in the chamber. The dead screamed, an unnatural echoing sound, and then began to collapse, one by one, as if the planet's control had finally been broken. The team ran. Debris fell around them, but the path to the transport ships remained. Shadows still lingered, but they were weaker, slower, and disorganized. As they reached the ships, Riley allowed herself a moment to breathe. They had survived. The dead world had tested them, attacked them, and almost destroyed them, but humanity had endured. The planet, though weakened, still pulsed faintly with energy. It had learned about them. It had watched them. Riley boarded the ship last, scanning the ruins one final time. Her hand rested on the console as the engines roared to life. "Set course for home," she said. The team secured their seats, exhaustion and relief washing over them. As the ship lifted off, the city shrank below them. From above, it looked quiet again, silent, but Riley knew better. The dead world had survived, and somewhere deep beneath the ruins, the faint glow of the core pulsed once more. "We survived," said one of the explorers, voice trembling. "But, will it ever stop?" Riley did not answer immediately. She stared at the glowing ruins, her mind racing. "Maybe not," she said finally. "But we learned something tonight. No matter how dead a world seems, humans will survive. We will adapt. We will fight. And we will return if we must." The dead city disappeared beneath them, swallowed by darkness. The team watched in silence, hearts heavy, knowing they had escaped, but the world they had disturbed was not gone. It was waiting. And if humanity ever returned, the dead would remember. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, cold and distant. Yet in the hearts of Riley and her team, a spark burned brighter than ever. They had faced the impossible, survived the dead, and learned that even in the darkest, most abandoned worlds, humans could endure. The ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, leaving the dead world behind. But deep in her mind, Riley knew one truth: this was not the end. The dead world had awakened. And one day it might awaken again. End of Part 6/Story Conclusion. The humans escaped the dead world, surviving against incredible odds. The dead are weakened but not destroyed, leaving the story with a thrilling mix of resolution and lingering suspense, perfect for a HFY sci-fi YouTube series finale. The human exploration team stepped carefully onto the surface of the planet. Dust swirled around their boots, and the wind carried a strange, cold chill that made their skin crawl. The world had been abandoned for centuries. Cities lay in ruins, buildings broken and crumbling, streets cracked and covered in thick layers of dust. Not a single sound of life disturbed the eerie silence, only the soft whistle of the wind through empty skyscrapers. Commander Riley, the leader of the team, walked at the front. She was brave, clever, and known for thinking clearly under pressure. Her sharp eyes scanned the horizon, noting every detail, every shadow that did not belong. "Stay close," she said quietly, her voice steady but low. "We don't know what's waiting for us here." The team followed, their boots crunching on shattered glass and broken stones. Strange signs of life, or what used to be life, appeared everywhere. Flickering lights flashed in the distance like someone, or something, was moving. Then the ground trembled slightly beneath them, just enough to make the team freeze. "What was that?" whispered one of the engineers, glancing nervously at Riley. "Probably an earthquake," Riley said, though her eyes narrowed. She had learned to trust instincts more than explanations. Something about this place felt wrong. Too wrong. They reached what had once been the city's center. A massive square lay before them, surrounded by the skeletons of towering buildings. Old records, half buried in rubble, were scattered across the floor. Riley bent down to pick up a piece, brushing off the dust. Strange symbols covered it, writing in a language no one recognized. Yet somehow the shapes felt familiar, as if the planet itself had left a warning. "Look at this," Riley said, showing the team. "These records, they tell of a civilization that vanished. No one knows why. Not even the records explain it clearly." Her words did not comfort anyone. The silence that followed felt heavier than the ruins themselves. Each step forward echoed, bouncing off broken walls, and the team felt like invisible eyes were watching them. Shadows moved at the edges of their vision, flickering and disappearing when anyone tried to look directly. Suddenly, a loud clatter rang from a collapsed building nearby. The team froze. Their hearts pounded in unison. Riley raised a hand, signaling them to stay silent. She crept forward, her boots careful not to make noise. The others followed, tense and anxious. As she reached the edge of the ruins, she paused. A shadow shifted behind a broken wall. It was too large, too fast to be just a trick of light. Riley's breath caught in her throat. She leaned closer to whisper, barely audible, "We are not alone." The team felt a chill run down their spines. Every instinct screamed at them to run, yet curiosity kept them rooted. Something lived here. Something was waiting. A sudden tremor shook the ground again, stronger this time. Dust and debris fell from nearby buildings. The team stumbled but kept their footing. "It's moving," Riley said, her voice a low growl. "Whatever's here, it's not dead. It's waiting for us." The lights flickered more violently now, and strange noises echoed through the streets. Not screams, not voices, but a low, gurgling hum, like something breathing underground. Riley signaled the team to regroup. "We need to find shelter and scan this area properly," she said. "No sudden movements. Stay alert." As they moved toward an old building, they noticed the walls were carved with strange symbols, glowing faintly in the dim light. The carvings looked alive, twisting and pulsing as if responding to their presence. Riley touched one carefully, and a shiver ran through her body. The symbols seemed to whisper, almost in a language she could almost understand. "Commander," one of the engineers said nervously, "these readings, the energy here, it's not natural. It's like the planet itself is alive." Riley nodded, her eyes scanning the horizon again. "Then we have to be careful. This world isn't just abandoned. It's awake. And it's watching us." Suddenly, a shadow darted across the square, faster than any human could move. The team gasped, weapons raised. Riley's heart raced, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Don't fire unless I say so. We don't know what we're facing." The shadow stopped, then disappeared behind a pile of rubble. Silence returned, heavier and more suffocating than before. The team could barely breathe. Every instinct told them to leave immediately, but Riley's curiosity and duty pushed her forward. "We came here to explore," Riley whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "We came to find answers. Whatever is here, we will face it. Together." The team looked at each other, fear and determination mingling in their eyes. They had landed on a planet that should have been dead, but it was anything but dead. Something ancient, something powerful, was stirring in the ruins. And they had no idea what was waiting for them in the darkness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the shadows in the ruins grew longer, darker, and somehow, more alive. Riley knew one thing for certain. Their arrival had awakened something that should never have been disturbed.